Hey there, this is Emily Swinson. I'm the content manager here at EverLogic, and I'd like to welcome you to another one of our webinars. This webinar is a special one because we have our fierce leader, President and CEO of EverLogic, Mike Goodwin. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Emily.
Yeah. We'd like to spend some time with you today to jump into a topic that I know you know a lot about, accounting, and the way that RV and trailer dealerships are different than other types of businesses when it comes to dealing with their books. I'd also like to ask you a few questions about ways dealerships can save time in their accounting processes. Before we jump into all of that, Mike, can you briefly tell your story with EverLogic?
Yes, Emily. We started EverLogic back in 2003. Basically, my father-in-law had a bunch of dealerships here in the Southeast, and he was using a system, a DMS system, that had its own accounting, but he was re-entering everything into QuickBooks. And so he had, I think, 7 or 8 people in his accounting department, and they were rekeying everything out of the DMS into QuickBooks. And at the time, I was building applications that interface with QuickBooks. So I said to him, I said, why are you doing this? I said, why don't we just build something that takes the information or the data from QuickBooks or from the DMS system and moves it right into the accounting system, QuickBooks. I said it could cut out, probably half your staff because they don't have to rekey everything. And so that's how we kind of got started and decided to build our DMS.
That's awesome. So you launched EverLogic from day one to help dealers experience greater success through the use of the right technology. Now, what were some of the issues that you were trying to solve when you created EverLogic, and are those issues still present in dealerships today?
Okay, well, one of the issues that many dealerships experience when it comes to managing inventory and managing their accounting is being able to, account for all of the additional costs or additional things that go into a vehicle before it gets sold. And so with QuickBooks itself, which a lot of dealers were using, it doesn't really do that very well. I mean, QuickBooks is a great accounting system, but it's not really a good inventory management system. So EverLogic, one of the problems that it solves is that we can keep track of, unit inventory or vehicle inventory and all of the add-on costs and additional things that happen with that. There's other things that happen in a dealership as well. So you have things like PAC, which is used basically to help calculate commissions and to help dealers, keep some of the expenses out of the commission, so that they are able to, things like interest charges or lot fees or just miscellaneous things that come along with the dealership that have to be there to support the unit. We're able to, add that on. So there's just a lot of little nuances that a DMS system can help. It can help a dealer, recoup some of the costs and keep some of that, and make sure that the commissions are being paid truly based on what the true profitability is.
Right. That's awesome. And what would you say when it comes to accounting processes? How are accounting processes in a dealership different than most accounting processes in other businesses?
Well, when I look at that, if I look at our business, EverLogic, it's pretty straightforward. We sell services. We have really just one line of business that we have to account for. But if you think about a dealership, they have so many lines of business that they're trying to account for. They have to account for, their sales of units, and then they have another department, F&I, which is different, and it's almost a different type of accounting. Then you have parts, and you have service. So you have really 4 different business units kind of going on in a traditional dealership. And then, of course, now you've got dealerships that have expanded into, doing online sales and things like that. It falls in under that, but there's definitely different things that have to happen. So in a traditional business, it's very straightforward, especially in a service-based business. But when you get to an RV dealership, you've got inventory, and you've got all these other different departments that you have to be able to properly account for each one and run them properly so you know if you're profitable or not.
Right, that makes sense. So QuickBooks, as you know, we use this with EverLogic. Is that the only accounting software that dealers should consider? In other words, why QuickBooks?
I think QuickBooks is probably one of the most robust accounting systems that a small to medium-sized business can use, and even some pretty large businesses use QuickBooks. thing about QuickBooks, it's very easy to adapt to any type of business as long as you set it up properly. And the other nice thing about QuickBooks is it has integrated payroll and payroll services with it. It has online banking and services. And QuickBooks being, a very small to medium-sized business-centric solution, it's got a lot of integrations with timekeeping systems and various everything. It's probably one of the biggest ecosystems out there. And so a traditional DMS accounting system does not have that ecosystem because people are not that well integrated. But if you take the true power of the QuickBooks ecosystem, you can be very, very efficient in your dealership. And so that's why I think QuickBooks is probably the best solution for any dealership, that has, 10 or 15 locations or less. It's gonna work very, very well.
That's great. Now, let's dive into some of the specific ways you've seen dealerships achieve greater success through better accounting practices. Can you think of a real-world example when a dealership consistently saved time or profited more because they did something new with their accounting processes?
Well, I can go back to day one when we first started building EverLogic to work with QuickBooks. I saw it firsthand at my father-in-law's dealership, Suncoast RV. He literally had, I think it was eight people in the accounting department. And after we built that bridge and had people started to be trained on how to use it, that quickly was reduced down to 4 people. And then he was able to repurpose those other people into other departments. I think somebody went off into warranty processing and somebody actually went onto the floor of the dealership.
Wow.
But he was able to really take, I think at the time when we first started building this product, he had 5 locations and he was able to quickly scale to 13 because of, having those efficiencies and being able to make sure he could tie all of his data together. Mm-hmm. And with QuickBooks, he was able to be able to see that. He was able to see how each location was being profitable and be able to dive in and make changes or make decisions based on information so he could make sure that each business unit was profitable.
That's great. Wow. Okay, here's a question that I'm sure a lot of our viewers are asking. What roles need to be filled in a dealership when it comes to accounting and bookkeeping?
Well, definitely you want to have somebody who is a good controller at a dealership. And what we find is that a lot of people at dealerships, they don't have specific accounting training, but they kind of get identified by the owner as somebody who has that mindset of being able to, to work the books. And so I think somebody who's, can see things not just in black and white, but they definitely have to be able to follow specific processes. They need to be able to break things down into the way that things actually happen. Right. But they also have to be able to think and be able to see things outside of just the accounting system. They need to know where all the information is coming from. So it has to be a pretty dynamic individual. Right. And it's somebody that you can trust. And it's somebody who can really think through business problems. Because like I said, dealership accounting, in my opinion, is probably one of the more complicated accounting practices that you have to be able to work. Right. Because there's just so many moving parts. Mm-hmm. And that person has to be able to understand how each one of these parts interact.
Yeah. And how would you suggest, trying to find that right person in the world we are in right now, where it's hard to find not only hard to find people to work for you, but hard to find the right people? Do you have any advice when it comes to hiring or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I would try to establish relationships with your local community colleges or universities, finding people that have, taking some education in accounting. They don't have to necessarily be a CPA or have an accounting degree to do dealership accounting, but if you could find somebody who has got some formal training, they're going to understand it a lot better than somebody who probably that you just groom out of the dealership. Because a lot of times, you've identified a rock star who might be in your parts or service department, or maybe in sales or F&I. And you're like, oh, wow, this person really gets everything. And then you move them into that role and they're lost in some cases. Yeah. So you've lost a person that was really good at what they were doing, and you put them into a role because it's a different mindset. It's not a sales role. It's not a a clerking role. It's somebody who really understands what is a profit, what's a profit and loss statement, what's a balance sheet, how does cash flow work.
Right.
Just they have to understand how money flows through the dealership. Accounting is the language of business, and it takes a special person to be able to really understand it and get it.
Right.
And so I would recommend try to find people through community colleges and stuff. That's like how we do it here at EverLogic. We've really found a lot of our great employees through local college here, University of North Florida, which we have a great relationship with. We found a lot of our programmers and our marketing people that have graduated from these colleges.
Right.
So
that's great advice.
yeah.
Cool. Now, when it comes to accounting processes as well, how have you seen in dealerships of different sizes, different locations, how have you seen examples of how accounting processes can work when it comes to just different sizes?
Honestly, different sizes don't matter when it comes to accounting. You have to have standardized processes throughout. What the biggest difference is that at dealerships, you have specific things that don't happen in other businesses in the world. So, for example, consignments. A lot of dealers are consigning units. Well, that takes a different accounting process than the traditional, hey, I'm buying a unit from the manufacturer, I'm flooring the unit, I'm selling the unit, I have to pay off the unit with a consignment. It follows a very similar path, but you've got to be able to take your mindset and go, okay, well, the consignment now, that's kind of like either my floor plan company or manufacturer that I'm purchasing the unit for, and then I've got to be able to flow it through. But a lot of times with consignments, they have liens. And so then you have to be able to account for that when you're selling it and when you're making sure that you're paying off the lien and making sure you're profitable. So these types of things, these kind of transactions in a dealership, while they are, to most people, they're very, very complicated, but to somebody who understands accounting, if you can break it down piece by piece and how it really happens, it becomes very simple. And with Quickbooks and with EverLogic, that process, I think, is very, very well thought out, and it works very, very well.
Yeah, that's great. Now, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Not really.
We're torturing him right now. All right, well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us, and we hope you all, you learned something, learned a thing or two from Mike, and we can't wait to see you all back here at our webinar next month.